From the political bromance of matching ties to differing publicly and a glaring mutual dislike, in what is now the clearest indication yet of a looming constitutional changes, President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday appealed to lawmakers to support the Building Bridges Initiative report when it is tabled in Parliament. His deputy William Ruto insists that the conversation must be about Mama Mboga and border operators. A self-declared hustler's clerk wheelbarrownomics to some is not adding up, though some who say that the second in command should focus on policies than wheelbarrows. This is Pandit Night. I am Abubakar Abdullahi. Good evening and welcome to this edition of Pandit Night. Our guests tonight, just a reminder, Kiharu lawmaker NDINDI NYORO is with us in studio, former Nairobi Speaker Beatrice Elachi, and our resident analyst Herman Manyora also join us on this show. Good evening. The three, thank you for making time for us tonight on TV 47.
Good evening to you, Abubakar.
All right, Mheshimiwa Ndindi, let me start with you. And I start by quoting what you have said. When you say Kenya ni moja na 2022 kabila ni mbili, wale walikuwa wanatufinyilia na sisi mahasla, kabila yetu ni hasla. First, who is this person who you reference to as wale walikuwa wanatufinyilia?
Thank you very much, Abubakar, for having me, and also for having Prof and Beatrice on the same show. It's a privilege to be on the same show with such great minds. Let me start by saying that in reference to what you've read,
yes,
which is a quote that I from my speech in Nyamira last week. If you go back to Kenyan politics, from way back then, we have always gone to our tribal cocoons and our ethnic enclaves after every 5 years. But if you actually subject that to critically, as a Kenyan who is thinking, not just a tribal voting robot, you'll actually see what I mean. Because normally, Kenyans, especially here in Nairobi or any other cosmopolitan areas, will live as brothers and sisters. But after every 5 years, our elites, who in quotes are the tribal kingpins, have always to remind us that you are Kikuyu, you are a Somali, you are this and that.
And when you say elite, do you mean the elite in general, or you are specific to some?
I'm specific to the political elite, and especially those people who have always enjoyed advantage, what I would call colonial advantage from way back then. But this is the point, that we have always had people trading us as human beings, and especially when they balkanize us and put us into baskets, labeled this tribe and the other. And what I meant with that quote is that we now have to come out of those cocoons. They have not served Kikuyus, they have not served the Luos, they have not served the Somalis or any other tribe. And therefore, my take is that there is a better conversation now, because instead of now pointing a figure to this person and the other one in terms of where they come from, in terms of their tribal background, now at least we have changed the conversation.
And you specify that these are the political elite of the country,
yes,
of which you are a member of, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So you are included in those people who have held the country backward, in your own admission.
Fortunately, I've only contested once, and of course, I wasn't part of the political landscape there before. But the point is this: most of the ethnic and tribal politics play in the national politics, not as much as like in our small positions, like a member of parliament. And we have always seen, especially the people we refer to as tribal kingpins, every 5 years imagine, and after they emerge, they trade us on a boardroom or in a boardroom, they share the positions, they share the spoils, but us as the normal Kenyans, and especially there before I became a Mheshimiwa, they trade us, they leave us behind. Whatever is gotten from it, they share among themselves, and they want to perpetuate the same. Now we want to break, just a little Abubakar, now we want to break those chains, and we want to start a new conversation. Instead of referring to me as Kamau, I come from there, or the other person, they come from there, let us now change this discussion to a Kamau and Onyango, who is always a victim in our country, and try to change this conversation into an economic,
because we have
an economic conversation, and that is where the hustler and dynasty is coming in.
All right, fair enough. And we have Herman Manyora, who is our resident analyst, and former Nairobi Speaker Beatrice Elachi on this broadcast. And let's get to them. Herman, Ndindi talks of the hustler versus those who are filineering for this matter, whom he has not classified, but I'll ask him. But is that a classification that, in your view, should be a classification in a progressive Kenya as of now?
You know, Abubakar, I agree with NDINDI NYORO, and thanks for the compliments, Ndindi, that mobilization in politics is always around something. In many instances, that something is not always an idea or an ideology. That people organize around very primitive things. So when you go to the United States of America, campaigns are on. I can get some echo, I hope you'll fix that. You'll find there are very lofty issues, very high sounding, very philosophical, very intelligent stuff. But those are really the things that will end up determining the US election. People organize around religion, around a tribe. They mobilize around ethnicity, religion. So it's not surprising that NDINDI NYORO's camp wanted to try and organize around class. It won't be the first time it is happening in the world. It has happened elsewhere. Except as an informed Kenyan who feels he owes it to Kenyans at least to play his role by advising, by informing, but sometimes by even warning that we've been organizing around a tribe. We mobilize using tribe. Now, if we want to move to the next level of organizing around hustler versus dynasty, I want to advise as follows. That today, the dynasty, like I said in one of the videos I released recently, the dynasty will be no more than Gideon, Uhuru, Raila, and a few others. It works along these lines, and Abubakar, give me a minute to explain this. You create an object of hate. You make people feel they are suffering because of dynasties. Now, the danger here, and I hope Ndindi, my friend, my young friend, is listening. The danger is this. The people you think are responsible for the suffering today are those dynasties, like I've said. Tomorrow it will be anybody who the masses think is rich.
All right, and
So
Haman,
if they view
Haman,
you
let me
as
interject
rich-
you at that point. Let me interject you at that point, and before we
Yes.
even let me interject you at that point, Haman, and before we even get to the
Yes.
tomorrow, still on the class classification, Haman. If the inequality between the rich and
Yes,
the rest,
yes.
those who feel as though the economy favors one side or another is justifiable grounds, then why should some worry in the political spheres of whether one terms him or herself as a hustler or otherwise?
I was about to explain and to tell you and Kenyans that this is a dangerous thing.
What makes it dangerous,
Because
Haman?
When you give people false hopes, when you tell them that you are suffering because of the rich people, and when you are not aware that who is rich in your view may not be who is rich in the view of the man in Kibra. When the mobs are rioting or doing whatever they do, and you pass there with your car, perhaps even a borrowed car, a car maybe you bought with a circle loan, or sold something small you owned, you will be rich to that crowd.
But Haman, this debate of the dynasty and
Crowd is
hustler
paying
is
for the blood of.
Haman, this debate of the hustler and dynasties is
Pardon?
squarely on the politics. It's not on the me and you and the others of this country. It is on the politicians, isn't it?
You see, unless I don't get quite what you are saying, let me repeat, come again.
I'm saying, Herman, the hustler dynasty divide is largely by politicians, and it is them who self-subscribe. It's not the normal Kenyan who is in talks here, is it?
You are right. It is the politicians who make Kikuyus feel they should not like a person from Lake Victoria, around Lake Victoria. It is not the person from Bungoma who has tribalism in him. His DNA does not have tribalism. It is the politician who mobilizes around tribe. And I'm saying Ndindi Nyoro and his friends are now moving it to class. So it has nothing to do with me or you or that person in Korogosho. It is a politician who is mobilizing around them versus us. We the poor versus the rich. And you must allow me to wind up, but to finish by saying, the rich you are appointing at today will not be the rich of tomorrow. It will include you who can barely afford a meal in the evening. But in the eyes of those people, you are now mobilizing and charging. You will be rich, and they could end up dealing with you.
All right, Herman, and thank you
for... That's the danger I was talking about.
All right, Herman, and let me bring Beatrice Ilachi to the discussion. Beatrice, Herman says it is a dangerous classification to group Kenyans as per classes, on whether they are hustlers or not. What is your view on that?
First of all, I want to thank my Mheshimiwa Ndindi and Professor, but also Abdallah, just to say that indeed, as Professor says, it's a very, very dangerous trend in terms of where you live. If you're a Kenyan, for example, who lives outside your tribal background, and you have gone somewhere and maybe you have, as many Kenyans will do, you leave, you move out of your county, you go to another county, you develop within that county, you become the dynasty of that county. That is the trend we have to be very careful about.
But you are not becoming the political dynasty of that area, is it, just to be clear?
Well, you know, it depends on how the politician will push the narrative, Abdallah. Because it is us who start the narrative. We know how it will suit us. We know how it will suit the other side when they will want to use it negatively. So it is a very, very dangerous trend. And also, for me, what starts me a lot is that we are in Jubilee. We are in government since 2013. Are we saying as a Jubilee government that indeed we have impoverished our people, that we have pushed them and made a country that has more people now who have challenges than the way we found them? Now, if that is the narrative, because I mean, when we were coming in 2013, when you listen to the slogans that we used, they were very different. We then come in with a slogan of analog and digital, meaning we had moved as a country, we were more innovators. Is that how Kibaki left us? Yes. So does it mean as Jubilee, as we move into the next slogan, which brings in the hustler and dynasty slogan, we have indeed made people more poorer than they were? Number two, do we deserve them to rule them again for another 15 or 20 years? Yet where we are, we have finished them? Is a question we need to ask ourselves. So if we start a narrative that brings in that they know-haves and haves, because that is what it means in simple layman's language, we are saying we have those who have and we have those who don't have.
All right, Beatrice Elachi, point made. Let me interject you at that point and come back to Ndindi. Both Herman and Beatrice say that is a dangerous route to go in classifying people based on class. First, your reaction to that as well.
First of all, I have to say that it's true. Politics is organized around identity. Identity can be anything. And previously, as I said before, the identity on which politicians have been exploiting is the identity of ethnicity. And I want to tell Herman, who is my friend, that actually no one needs to lecture Kenyans on who the dynasties are. this much verbosity about dynasty is this, you may become a dynasty later. I mean, Kenyans are very clear-minded on who the dynasties are at this particular time as we converge around this campaign. And the dynasty we are referring to, and respectively so, is that there are people in this country who have had colonial privilege. Right from the time Kenya became Kenya, there are people, Abu Bakr, who have always had advantage over normal Kenyans. And you know this advantage has been undue. It was not on...
And what kind of advantages are these?
Advantage one is economic. Remember that organizing a political vehicle and organizing a political behemoth, so to say, requires a lot of resources. And having said that, I want to say that there are people in this country that have always enjoyed, right from the colonial time, an advantage over normal Kenyans. And when you enjoy commercial economic advantage, then what that means is that you are the owner of capital. And if you give me a minute, I'll explain a retro. Most of the countries like Kenya, where we have a return on investment that grows higher than the GDP, what that means is that inequalities continue to widen. So that if people who have been enjoying capital, the means of production, from years back, are the same people with the same capital now, what that means, Abu Bakr, is that me and you and many other people who have no access to this capital will always remain slaves, so to say,
fair enough.
of these owners of capital.
Fair enough, and you have a right to point to the economics. Okay. You have a bachelor's degree in economics, of course, no question to that. And Oxfam supports what you are saying in as far as the gap between the rich and the rest widening in this country is concerned. But in this debate, and very often we hear of people, we hear of they. In your clear mind, do you know who these people are?
I know them. I mean,
Can you name them who they are?
I have.
Assuming I don't know or our viewers don't.
Then they have no business viewing this show. I mean, every Kenyan knows who these people are. People who have always enjoyed colonial privilege in this country. People who, right now, Abu Bakr, our children, they go to school with their grandchildren or people from their families. They will always have this advantage because this has been the owners of capital. This has been the owners of the factors of production. And these have been the people who continues to dominate. And I want to caution Manyora. The identity he's referring to as dangerous is good because it is progressive. When you talk about ethnic, for example, and tribal identity, that is a static identity. What that means is that people who belong or are bundled up in some ethnic and tribal cocoons that can never leave this country, for example, those are people who are condemned to never lead. At the very least, the issue of economy and class, the issue of hustler and dynasty is progressive, so that I can move from being a hustler and later become a dynasty. And
you can also move from
identity.
You can also, and the factors of market demands, you can also move from a dynasty to a hustler.
Exactly the point.
And what happens now that if Abu Bakr was a dynasty and he moves to a hustler?
All that we are saying is that Abu Bakr, we need to be on a level playing ground. And we need the people who actually, where the rubber meets the road, those people need to be on the policy making table. And therefore, what you are saying is that now we can depart without necessarily antagonizing on anyone. We can depart on this parochial kind of leadership where the people who have continue to dominate those who don't have. Then we can have the people who have not always had to be on the policy making table. And you know for sure that table only accommodates 2 or 3 in this country, so that they can make policies, they can make progressive policies in this country, and especially economic ones, that can touch their peers. And their peers are the people who are down there. What we have heard is people who are detached. People who actually lord over us, people who actually lead us, are people who are so detached to the normal livelihood of Kenyans. They become like, and I'm sure Manyora knows about this. In 1790, thereabout, there was something called the French Revolution. Prior to the French Revolution, there was the reign of King Louis XVI, and she had a wife called Marie. And one time, people were rioting in the streets because they were hungry. And Maria was asking, why are these guys rioting? And the response was...
And you are driving the point of being detached.
Please, these people are hungry. And he asked, What's wrong? There is no bread. He was telling them to eat the cake if there is no bread. That is the kind of leadership that we need not perpetuate in this country. We need people who actually knows what a wheelbarrow is about, and what a mkokoteni is about.
Fair enough. And I'm sure Herman wants to respond to that, but before I let him do so, why is the realization of class, the hustler, the dynasty coming in 2020? Is it a coincidence that this idea of the economics and changing the narrative to be based on economics is coming just two rather years before the 2020 polls? Is it just a coincidence?
It's not a coincidence. This has been simmering for quite some time. Remember that most of the normal Kenyans have been battered by the economy that is headed south. And therefore, those people who had something in the pocket previously are people who are actually now being turned into being dependents. What I'm saying, Abu Bakr, is that we've had a very silent revolution happening, and especially in the midst of Kenyans. The only advantage we have now, and I'm trying to patch up to the points because of time, is that at least this revolution that we are having in this country now is mobilized around mainstream politics. Because most of the revolutions that happens in most of the countries of the world are just directionless. At the very least now, Abu Bakr, at least we have a revolution that is not ethnic, that is not religious, that is economic, and that is being mobilized around mainstream politics. Because the danger is that if we have the kind of revolution that we have now, we may actually slide back to a country like Ukraine.
And so that we move on from this point, you equate what is happening now to a revolution.
It is a revolution by Kenyans. William Ruto is just a victim of circumstance.
All right, and let me get to Herman. Herman, as you respond to what Ndindi has said, I want to ask you a question by quoting what the DP himself says on this class classification. He says, I'm here to change a narrative in our politics, and they won't change that. Yes, it is time to change, time to talk and walk the hustler narrative, not about power sharing, but empowerment, not about positions, but jobs for our people, not about leaders, but ordinary citizens. The wheelbarrow conversation, he says, will continue. He talks of power to the people, sharing and empowering the people. At a face value, one would suppose the second in command saying this is ideally noble, is it?
Well, yeah, it could be, but you see, I think there's some kind of confusion here. And I invite NDINDI NYORO and his colleagues to listen to me. You are confusing politics with social economics. You see, your target is the dynasty, and by dynasty you mean Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila, and a few others, Gideon, and so on and so forth. But I've warned you already. You are identifying an object of hate. And that object of hate cannot remain those 3 or 4. It will grow into what you yourself now are owning up. You are now sliding from politics into economics. And you are inviting a revolution. A revolution, first of all, by its nature, is mainly violent. And it spares no one. The socioeconomic structure of this country, NDINDI NYORO and your friends, and Abu Bakr, I invite you to also listen, first of all, is fragile. Secondly, there is so much exploitation in this country. There is so much suffering in this country. There's so much greed and theft in this country. I am on record as saying that you cannot be rich in this country unless you have stolen from the public. I stand by that. Sometimes my students and I really debate a lot and even quarrel in class. When I tell them, if you stay in Lavington, your father must have stolen. Some of them stand up and really get violent. That is the arrangement in this country. It's very difficult to do very honest business in this country. The billionaires in this country can take me to court tomorrow. It's very difficult for you to tell me. It's just a handful of people who have made money genuinely. But the rest of these fellows have made money badly. They have robbed society. And society is bitter, pained, and suffering. So yes, NDINDI NYORO, you are right. This country is ripe for a revolution. But don't you for a moment imagine, Ndindi Nyoro, that revolution will spare you. Because in the eyes of the people driving, the people now you call the people the hustlers, you are just the dynasty. They will be looking for you who is responsible for their suffering. You get it? You mentioned the French Revolution. I invite those who are talking about the hustler narrative, talking about the revolution. These days, knowledge has been simplified. You can Google and it's very simple sites.
But Haman,
they explain to you how it works.
Haman,
Yes.
Haman, allow me to ask this. Is it not a matter of a gifted truth for this matter that some people in the political class being favored or have been favored by one or two reasons, partly because of either where they were born or the economic condition that they were brought up in? There is some element of favorism, be it by nature, be it by luck or otherwise, to some politicians. That's not something you can rule out and blind your eyes to.
That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm making the point that over 80% of the people of this country are suffering. Almost 80% of Nairobi live in informal settlements, in very inhuman settlements. You get what I'm saying? And therefore, talking about a revolution around the class is like dancing around a petrol tanker which has overturned with a cigarette and lighting it. You are lighting fire. You are being naive. Because a majority of the people in this country are suffering. And when they cut a divide, Abubakar and Ndindi Nyoro, hope you listen, and Beatrice and the rest of you people in this country, when they draw the line, we are this side suffering, we are the hustlers. Ndindi Nyoro, you'll be on the other side. You will be with those who are rich, with those who have exploited Kenyans to make money that you have. You will be with those who are responsible for the pain, either through policies, or through direct thefts, through exploitation, through the people you employ and pay 6,000, through people's children you hire to cook for you, work for you, you give them 7,000, through the workers in your small companies or your big companies, you pay 14,000. The people who work from Kibra on foot to go and work in your industries, in industrial area, these people are living in pain and they are suffering.
All right.
And they have a very good idea who is responsible for that pain. I therefore warn Kenyans and invite them to listen to me. Do not dance around a petrol tanker with a matchstick trying to light your cigarette.
Fair enough, Haman.
You will not enjoy that cigarette.
Fair enough, Haman, and you have quite a number of times invited us to listen. We are listening to you nonetheless. Let me bring Beatrice to the discussion.
I hope you listen carefully.
The DP talks about this wheelbarrow conversation continuing. And this wheelbarrow has been cited as though it is a symbol of empowering the young people wherever they are across the 47 counties in this country. First, is it an empowerment in your own view that you endorse?
Well, first of all, I think I am sorry to say that to endorse the empowerment of a wheelbarrow, I will not endorse. Because that farmer or that mama mboga you talk about struggles so much to ensure the child goes to school, goes to campus, and in her belief and dream and vision is when the child comes out, she is coming out of being mama mboga and seeing where the child is headed. Now, when you come out and you tell such parents that, you know what, the best you can do is I will empower first your child from campus to have a wheelbarrow and then move on. I think it's also an abuse to them.
But
if I'm asked Abdallah, yes.
Will tonight someone who probably has gotten a wheelbarrow, who did not have a job and is using that wheelbarrow to make a living, disagree with your thoughts?
I agree. And what do I say? I am saying, is it the best way to move a country that you took in 2013, and I repeat, with a word, analog versus digital. So have we gone back to analog? That we must push again back to where we were trying to come from. But I have no dispute of having the wheelbarrow. I have a dispute with an administration that came in on a platform that was very different. The same administration, we are still in power, but we have already changed the narrative of the citizens. It means we lied to them, and that's my view, and that's why I feel it is a wrong narrative, Abdallah. I'm saying it is a wrong narrative in two ways. One, we promised young people in this country that we will push them, we will ensure they join the different jobs that are there, we will create industries, a middle-class country. Have we failed as a Jubilee government to do that? And that cannot come out and say, yes, we have failed or no, because we are still in that administration, and we are hoping when it comes to 2022, you can achieve what you promised the people. But if we have already changed our narrative in the middle, and we are saying, no, we are not going to achieve innovation in this country. Best innovation is pushing a wheelbarrow, is pushing a mkokoteni. I think that is where I have a problem with my Jubilee administration.
All right.
That is why I'm telling my Mheshimiwa, that while we come out and say, oh, we have the hustlers and the dynasties, as Professor has just said, and I will repeat that, go back to 2007. 2007, when we started our the war in terms of the elections and all that, it ended up in Nairobi. That's what I want to use.
All right, Beatrice, you ask in your response whether it is the best way for a government that had promised a digital economy, a more prosperous economy. But is it a way of helping the young people, as the DP himself says, as the lawmakers allied to him say? All right, it seems as though we have a slight problem there. Nonetheless, let's get back to studio. And
if she's off air, I can complete her.
I can hear you, Haman, sorry.
Haman, let Beatrice answer that question.
That this is the same narrative we had in Nairobi, where you say there are no haves and the haves. And people would walk in somebody's house and say, you know what, this is ours, we are taking it. So do we want to see the same narrative come back? Is that the economic that we are trying to empower? Are we saying, when you give me a wheelbarrow, Abdallah, is it that now all my challenges have gone, that now I have started life, I am able to move on and feed my family? It is wrong. If that is the narrative, to me, it is a very wrong narrative.
All right.
In fact, it is an abuse of human rights and justice of administration to many, if you move that.
All right, and again, Beatrice, I will, on behalf of the many people of this country who probably, and I suppose, use wheelbarrows as an economic empowerment tool, I bet they will have a different view on that. Nonetheless, let's get to NDINDI. NDINDI, when the DP talks about this wheelbarrow conversation continuing. First, as the second in command, one will suppose a deputy president will talk of policies, progressive for that matter, in a 21st century Kenya, and not wheelbarrow, is it?
Yeah. Abu Bakr, listening to Beatrice Erachi is very frustrating.
Why, sir?
Because I think the bigger problem we have in this country is actually not the dynasties themselves, but they are surrogates and wannabe dynasties. That a person who actually was vying to represent people of Dagoretti, where she definitely knows the use of wheelbarrows and mkokoteni, can come here and talk a lot of kizungu mingi about policies and etc. Yes, policies should be made in terms of empowering the general population, especially the unemployed youth. But I think it goes a long way, and Beatrice should understand better than myself, that there is a person down there in Dagoretti or any other place in Nairobi, because she is referring more to Nairobi, whose livelihood only depends on that wheelbarrow. Actually, Abu Bakr, that wheelbarrows and mkokoteni are actually a huge segment on the mode on which our economy is carried. And therefore, we must not trivialize these people, especially the recipients.
But Ndindi, you will also understand that an economy that is in 7 trillion debt, a 1.2 trillion budget, will not be run on wheelbarrows.
Abubakar, I was making this point because
if I can just cut
let me speak. Or
okay, Ndindi, go ahead, Ndindi.
Or you'd have come alone to have your time.
If I can just cut you 1 minute.
No, Beatrice, let him respond to that, and Ndindi, go ahead.
Abubakar, I have had Beatrice referencing so much on the Jubilee, and I want to give her some few facts in reference to what she has said, one in support, and the others, of course, on the other side. In the year 2012, when Kibaki left this government as president, the debt in Kenya in terms of the external and the domestic debt was to a tune of 1.8 trillion shillings. Currently, as we talk, both the domestic and external debt is in excess of 7 trillion Kenya shillings. We are borrowing Kenya shillings 100 million every hour. Every single hour. Every single 24 hours every day, we are borrowing Kenya shillings 2.5 billion Kenya shillings. And I agree with Erachi. Yes, we can do what we are doing as individuals, but the bigger picture of growing an economy should be on policy. And the bigger picture of the policy, and I'm hoping the professor is listening, is on the head of the economy. And I'm not trying to antagonize even the head of state, but I'm giving facts. In the year 1978, as I come to that point, so that I deliver it well, in China, there is a party called the Communist Party of China. And the head was Mao Zedong prior to 1976. And he was the leader of China. And he had two policies. One was called Proletarian Revolution and the Cultural Revolution. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
And this led to over 12 million deaths out of hunger in China, out of his policies. As the leader of the Communist Party of China. Do you know who was the Secretary General of the Communist Party of China then? It was Deng Xiaoping. He was the SecGen. I would, maybe to bring it to the context, he was like the Deputy President of China then, to bring it into the context. It took 2 years, then Mao Zedong became President of China in 1978. The policies is always ahead. Even when Mao Zedong was implementing the Cultural Revolution, he started implementing them. That was the basis of the growth of the Chinese economy that you know up to date. From 1978 upwards, the economy of China started to grow by over 10%. I can bring you closer home. But before we come home, go to a place like Tanzania. Magufuli was actually a minister of Kikwete. All the changes you are seeing Magufuli making, he didn't manufacture a new head to be implanted on him. He still had the same brain, the same head.
And all those changes are happening based on policies, not wheelbarrows.
Exactly. I'm coming there. Let me now come home. Mwai Kibaki was the health minister of Moi himself. Mwai Kibaki was a vice president for 10 years of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. You know how the economy was then. Mwai Kibaki became president in 2013. Me and you know, and every Kenyan knows, that Kenya, in terms of the economy, stood on its feet in the Kibaki's regime. So as we talk about policy of the Jubilee government, I hope Erachi is directing the policy narrative to where it should be. Because an economy is led by the person with the mandate. And the person with the mandate, that is the reason why I've given you all those examples, is the person who has been entrusted by Kenyans.
Exclusively, or there is a chance that the deputy president will also be judged based on that?
You live in Kenya. We have deputy president called William Ruto. But you know for sure he's deputy president by name. Manyora himself knows that he's deputy president by name. So even as Erachi tries to convince Kenyans about this policy, about the other one, he should be directing it to himself, to herself, because he has been part of that system, being the Speaker of Nairobi, given the position by no other than the head of state of Kenya. And I hope she's also reflecting she gives a lot of these theories so that we see actually where the point is. But I want to say, as I finalize on that point, let us not look down and talk down on these recipients of the tools of trade, like wheelbarrows and mikokoteni. And Manyora may not know, he's a professor in big universities. But at the very least,
he will tell us whether he knows or not.
Should be knowing the need of a wheelbarrow, should be knowing the use of a mkokoteni, because the people she purports to want to lead are actually the people who run the economy on those specific tools of trade.
Fair enough, and let me bring Beatrice this time to the discussion. Beatrice, if the DP, the second in command, is generous enough to empower young people,
I want to say a small thing before Beatrice comes in.
No, Herman, let me ask. Let me ask Beatrice this question, Herman. Beatrice, if the DP is generous enough to distribute wheelbarrows as a mode of empowering young people, if he's doing it at an individual caliber, why should anyone have a problem with that if it is not a policy to distribute wheelbarrows?
Well, first of all, Abdallah, in 2017, I indeed gave my young people the wheelbarrows and mukokotenis. That was Beatrice Elachi, a nobody. And when my DP comes and does the same, what am I expected to do? Because I thought he's going to empower us more so that we come out from what we gave our young people. At that time, we were telling them, yes, you're using mukokoteni to collect garbage. Yes, you're using your wheelbarrow either to sell bananas or something. But in real sense, we knew there must be now a policy to move them to the next level. And that is why I know Mheshimiwa will say Beatrice knows. Yes, because I did it in 2017. I don't expect it to again be happening when I'm moving on to 2020. I am supposed to be celebrating and saying we came back to power. We are now going to move our people from the kokotenis and the wheelbarrows we gave them as the nobodies. And and now I have my deputy who is supposed to be giving more innovation than what we gave as people who are just ordinary people trying to buy.
But Beatrice, let me interject you at that point. Is it not the case that the deputy president is not necessarily the only politician who gives out materials such as wheelbarrows, be it and other things that have been regarded as an empowerment tool? You, the political class in general, have used that as a strategy.
Abdallah, I am saying, I am not, first of all, I have no point of contention on that. I have a point of contention when the second in command, who is about to take over the country, goes back to the things we've been doing. And we are saying we need to change and ensure we change the lives of our people. We empower our people from where we found them to a better place. I think that is where we are with the point of contention. So I am not in dispute at all. My dispute is it cannot be the next president who is again now taking us back to wheelbarrows. No, Abdallah, I reject completely that.
All right, Beatrice, and you have a right to refuse and say no to that at an individual level or whatever level that will be. Nonetheless, Herman, as you respond, and you wanted to respond to the discussion, I want to ask you a question and move from the wheelbarrows, the hustler and dynasty narrative to the so-called deep state. And the question is the deep state first a reality or a conspiracy theory, as some say?
Yeah, thank you for saying I should react. First of all, to help Beatrice, you see, there's nothing wrong with anybody giving wheelbarrows from Kokoteni. But when you elevate wheelbarrows to an organizing principle, when you talk about wheelbarrow narrative, then we shall question that. Because then where are you taking the country, like Beatrice is asking? Now, again, to respond to what NDINDI NYORO said, you see, it is until the handshake happened that William Ruto stopped being part of this government. So the whole idea of saying that he was not part of this, let's take this to Huru's doorstep, that is wrong. We've seen them going around and talking about laptops, talking about this, stadiums and the rest. They were always together until the handshake. So that cannot wash. Secondly, Kibaki and the guy in China could not have spoken because when you served under Moi, in the days of Moi, surely you know what happened to people. You wouldn't have your voice. Neither would you have your voice in communist China during the days of Mao Zedong. You can't talk about that now. But much more importantly, if it is true you are deputy president and you are not powerful, why don't you just tell Kenyans, look here, for the time being I'm giving you wheelbarrows, but I'm going to fix the problem in this country. This is my stand on second-hand cloth that is robbing us of job. This is what I will do about minimum wages in this country. This is what I'll do about the dumping of useless goods from China, India, and everywhere that has killed our textile industry, our leather industry, our butter, and all these kind of things. And that's why we have people to give wheelbarrows because they are not working. This is what I'll do about electricity to make it affordable. You don't need to be in power to give people an idea of what kind of president you can be. And in the 21st century, in the Kenya of 2020, nobody would ask the deputy president why he's saying that. Who will not go for him in the manner Moi would have gone for Kibaki if he had as much as tried to question the things Moi was doing. So let's live with the times. Now the deep state, we have talked about this thing. The deep state is not a formal arrangement. The deep state refers to a collection of individuals, sometimes within government, sometimes outside government, sometimes outside government but working with government. But sometimes, and it has happened in places like America, the deep state could be made of people who have an idea of what a country ought to be. They have an idea of what, say, America ought to be. And there will be people in the intelligence, people in the military. So they have an idea of what they want America to be. So if they see you misbehaving, they will not allow you.
And Haman, is it a case? Haman, is it a case? Haman, is it a case of if they see you misbehaving, or a case of some who are, as others allege, sabotaging some within the system?
Of course, I'm saying at the very highest level of it all is people with an ideal about their country. But other times they are just buccaneers, wheeler dealers. People want to make money and they want to know who becomes minister of this and minister of the other, so that those people who become ministers, for example, don't stand in their way. They want to have an influence who becomes president when Uhuru leaves or something like that, because then their interests are protected and they will have some power. So the deep state is always there. It has powers. Sometimes it has been overstaged, like in America, Trump overstaged them, overdid them, overrode them. Sometimes they are so well entrenched that it takes quite a time to get at them. Sometimes they reign supreme for a long time, over generations. I hope in this country we may be having a deep state, but I hope we move from that where we organize to a level where we organize our politics around fair elections, around who wins, who forms his government, and then runs the country in the right way.
Fair enough, Haman. Let me give Ndindi a chance to respond to that. Go ahead.
I want to be precise, and I hope Professor is listening. Because I talked about the economy being led by the head. That's why I referenced on China. I referenced on Tanzania, a very recent case. I have referenced on Kenya. Mwai Kibaki is well known. And Manyora has gone around to say that China was different, Moi was different. I want Manyora to tell me, because he's one of the spokespersons of the so-called deep state. What is the he knows what I'm talking about. What is the difference?
I wish I was.
What is the difference between
my friend.
What is the difference between the communist China and the current Kenya? That's one. What is the difference between the Moi regime and the current Kenya, if not for the worse? Because in the communist China and in the Moi's regime in Kenya, we never saw anyone tear gassing churches. We never saw interior ministry paying people like Manyora to appear on TV shows to purport that they are resident analysts, that they are...
And you will have a right to respond to that, but still go ahead.
That they are political analysts. Yet he knows for sure, and Manyora knows, we are afraid that he knows what I'm talking about. We never saw that in the Moi regime. We never saw that in the propaganda machine of the Communist Party of China. It is happening now. So as we talk about, the economy is led by the head, and the policies are led by the head. I hope Manyora is not trying to say that Kenya is going on the downward trend and the economy is headed south. I hope he's not blaming the head of state. And I hope he's not blaming the deep state that sends him to TV stations like the one he's appearing now.
And you believe he was sent by deep state?
He's there, he can respond.
No, he has not been sent by deep state.
Let me
I don't know if he's a member. I can't speak on his behalf. You know our chance. Ndindi,
it's okay.
I can't speak on his behalf.
Yes.
He has a right to.
Yeah.
I can speak on behalf of the channel.
Yes.
And I can authoritatively say he has not been assigned by the deep state. But nonetheless, Ndindi, you talk of the Moi Kenya.
Yeah.
You make reference to China.
Let me respond a bit.
That is in contrast opinion to what you said in 2017 at a personal level.
Exactly.
2 articles that will forever be quoted in as far as your political career is concerned. It's you, Ndindi, who said, and I quote, "What this country needs is a benevolent dictator with a clear mission of making Kenya great. He should appoint judges," you said, "order hanging of the corrupt and oversee a cleanup of the system." You also said on 22nd of September 2017, "We should at this time enhance the power of the presidency, choosing our security bosses, Supreme Court judges, top officials of commissions and other influential persons should be," you said, "the prerogative of the president." This is a contrast opinion to what you held back 2 years ago, isn't it?
Abubakar, I've always gotten that kind of feedback most of the time I come to these kind of shows. And I hope this is the last time I'm getting this question, because I have always given a very definite answer. If you read my article, it was in the Daily Nation then, I talked about a figure called a benevolent dictator. And I want to teach you something, and I'm sure Manyora knows more about this. There are 2 kinds of dictators. There is a benevolent dictator, and there is a petty dictator. The word is not in reference to anyone to demean. It is just a definition. A benevolent dictator is a person like Deng Xiaoping, the one that I just referenced. Deng Xiaoping led China from 1978. The economy grew by over 10%. The Chinese people were able to stand up. Benevolent dictators are people like Lee Kuan Yew, a person who led with an iron fist Singapore, and Singaporeans can look back and are proud of their leader because he was there to lead them and actually deliver fruits. A benevolent dictator is a person like General Park of South Korea, a person who took South Korea when it was poorer than Kenya during independence. By the way, they came here for benchmarking South Koreans. That guy took up the South Korean economy, and in a span of 19 years, the exports in South Korea were growing at a compounded 40% per annum. And therefore, the economy grew by over 664 times in the span of 19 years. That is the kind of a dictator that I was seeking, and I'll still start by that, because I believe I would rather you curtail my small freedoms here and there, but then you make the country rich, because the chains that actually continue to entangle most of the people in a country like Kenya is not just the freedom of speech and etc. and etc.
But Ndindi,
it is the chains of poverty. Juxtapose that now to a petty dictator. The people have given you the examples. General Park, Lee Kuan Yew, Deng Xiaoping, and I can give many others. They owed nothing. You go to South Korea now, you'll not be told about a rich General Park. No one will tell you about this skyscraper belongs to Lee Kuan Yew, because they were serving the people they were leading. Now, a petty dictator
that's the opposite of what you say. Okay.
A petty dictator look for positions to enrich themselves. One through outright corruption, or number 2, through policy.
All right, Ndindi, and before we get to the other panelists, you wrote these articles in September 2017 at the backdrop of what was a nullified election.
Exactly.
At a height when a president says he will revisit the decision of the Supreme Court. And you wanted that president to appoint the Supreme Court judges, top official commissions, appoint judges, hang the corrupt, oversee a cleanup of a system. You wrote this article in the context of Africa and to the larger East African subsection that you understand the detriment of dictators over the years.
I have given you clear examples, because if you study economy and political science, you'll see that every form of government has advantages and a price to pay. One of the prices that you have to pay for a democracy is that you have to subject every single thing to consultations, to checks and balances, which is good, and especially when we cannot guarantee the character of the leader.
Good.
But also, one of the disadvantage or one of the advantage of lack of it is that you are able to make smart decisions very fast. Like the decisions that were being made by Lee Kuan Yew when he was making Singapore a financial sector in the world. The kind of decisions that were made by General Park when he established an export council, a council that was meeting every month, every year, and he attended all the meetings in all the years that he led.
For the interest of the people.
Because he had a clear mind.
For the
clear mind was to grow the exports, and the exports were, of course, now to lift up the economy of South Korea. Those are the kind of examples that I was referencing.
All right.
I was not referencing on tear gas dictators. I was not referencing on arresting people who are supporting ideas that are not musical to the ears of the people in the interior and people in higher offices.
Fair enough, indeed.
I was not referencing on people who are insecure when Kenyans actually express themselves peacefully.
All right, Ndindi, and you have explained that in your own view. Nonetheless, let's get to Beatrice Elachi. Beatrice, still on the question of the deep state. First, is it a reality that there is a deep state, or as some say, a conspiracy theory?
I think in every country we have what you call the deep state. And in those countries, they control different economic empowerments that you see in those countries. For example, and they started many years. I'll give examples of different clubs that started those years, and where you find a club that comes and says, one, that you would want to believe, especially the key businessmen that we have in a country, they will always control that country for the sake of ensuring their businesses run. They hold the economy, and we have financiers who hold the economy in banking sectors. We have those who hold the economy in the industrial sectors. These are people who are very influential in terms of ensuring how does the country move, and how do they ensure they will have a person who also protects their interests in terms of whether it's manufacturing, they're in business of agriculture. It's all over the world.
Because you say these are...
sit down.
Beatrice, you say these are individuals who are influential. Are they influential to the extent of meddling with the outcome of elections and results in as far as democracy is concerned?
Well, when you look at, let me give the US today, and you look at Trump, and you realize whether, and this is just my opinion as I see the elections move, you will see they still have a hold on Trump, and people will think, yes, Biden is getting it or whatever, based on how they are moving. But you can see there's something that moves, and it's the same. I mean, let's come to Kenya. Forget about whether they control the elections, but in terms of ensuring that they support the person they need, and they do it very quietly because they know they are in business, and therefore they have to have an environment that is very conducive for their business, and therefore they will remove their resources to ensure that what they want happens. And sometimes when they don't get it, they still come in, and you find them again influencing the next government that comes in. And still, when we talk about that deep state. I mean, I don't want to talk about the one for Kenya, because I don't know whether the deep state of Kenya is a deep state where they influence what, like you say, elections and all that. But the most important thing all over the world, you will find different strong clubs that were started. And those clubs, I remember when you look at the U.S. history, I think Jimmy Carter, when he was president, when you realize he came in with very an influential cabinet. And when you look at the history of each of these men, these were men who were in different clubs, and they were very strong clubs that really supported Jimmy to get in. So they're there. And you remember in 2002 when Kibaki comes in, we had a very strong, influential civil society that really pushed that election. And many of them, that's how the Kibuta Kibwanas and many others came into now government and started working with government. So they're there, Abu Bakr.
All right.
It depends on how.
Fair enough, Beatrice. Fair enough, Beatrice. Let me get to Herman. Herman, just on the question of who this deep state is then, we have response both from Raila and Ruto, and I'll quote what they have individually said. Raila on the deep state says, you know where I am, I hold no position in government. The government is led by the president whose name you know and his deputy whose name you also know. So if you are talking about the deep state who is there, it is the president and his deputy. That is what Raila says. The DP says we are threatened that there is a system, that there is a deep state, that even if you vote, there will be people who will rig our vote, that there are people who will sit somewhere and decide. We are waiting for those people and that system and the deep state. We will come with that system and the deep state. They will come rather with that system and the deep state, but we will come with the people and God. First, Herman, they both deny of being part of it, and they have a right to do so. But how deep, Herman, then, is this deep state? Can it influence the outcome of an election in a democratic country as Kenya is?
Before we take a tape measure to measure how deep it is, let me comment on something. I could see you trying to wrestle with NDINDI NYORO to protect me. Abu Bakr, I need no protection. Anybody who operates in public space like me, or public intellectuals have a problem. Sometimes they are misunderstood. I know NDINDI NYORO hates Matiang'i and Kibisho in a very special way. So much so that if hatred was actually bullets, Matiang'i and Kibisho will long have died from NDINDI NYORO's hatred. Well, we understand that. It's not a big problem. But I always think NDINDI NYORO, like the rest of his people, fear to tell things to Uhuru Kenyatta. So they either target Raila Odinga or Kibisho or Matiang'i. Why can't they just man up and face Uhuru Kenyatta? But they are beginning to do it now, so it's understandable. So don't protect me. You see, what NDINDI NYORO seems to forget is that things have happened, but we shall forgive him perhaps because of age. But there is reading somebody should read. If you talk of only Uhuru Kenyatta's government being the one really attacking churches or religious institutions, then either you don't live in this country or you have allowed your age to stand in the way of you knowing things. If you tell Muslims about that from 63, all the way through Shifta and the rest and the Wagala massacre and the rest, then they will be wondering, what is NDINDI NYORO saying? If you talk about Kenyatta, Moi, and even Kibaki, Christians will be wondering. The late NDINDI Mwana Nzeki will be wondering. Bishop Gitari will be wondering. The late Alexander Muge. What are you telling Kenya's NDINDI NYORO? What are you saying? You are saying problems with the church, with Muslims and mosques, begin with Uhuru Kenyatta. And by the way, talking of churches, don't go there. Don't dare you go there. You are going to make Kenyans ask you very uncomfortable questions. Don't go there, please. I beg you. I'm an old man. When I talked about communist China, and you got me wrong. When I talked about communist China, I meant China of those days was not a China you could open your mouth and speak against the system. When I talked about the Moi regime and Kibaki, it was at a time under leader Kenyatta Senior and Moi, it took the most brave of men like Jaramogi Oginga Odinga to stand up against those people. Ordinary people like Kibaki would not have done that. And I would understand. Those were dangerous times. That is what I meant, Ndindi Nyoro. And I hope you learn. We can have a cup of tea, I teach you a bit of our history and even world history. Back to the deep state and how deep it is. If what has gone on in this country from independence is anything to go by, we have a deep state that runs very deep. How deep? You can only ask somebody like Raila Odinga. If Raila didn't get the presidency in 2007, if the things that happened in 2013 and 2017 are anything to go by, there surely is a deep state. When Raila says the deep state is Ruto and Uhuru, that is not what Raila is saying. Raila is simply telling Ruto, you have been a beneficiary of what the deep state has done to politics in this country.
But Haman Raila,
he's not saying the president and the deputy. Yes.
Haman, Raila is telling the DP that he is part of the deep state. Raila was the former Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya, a high-ranking politician. One will point the same finger to that direction as well, that he is also part of it.
Again, when Condoleezza Rice, then Foreign Secretary, head of what you call the Secretary of State from America, came to help us organize ourselves after we had met in 2007. He told Kibaki this, and Kenyans in general, we want you and Raila to share power. And there must be no illusion to power. There must be real power sharing. Even if you are young Abubakar and Ndindi Nyoro, you must have read about our history. You know there never was any power sharing between Kibaki and Raila. We know the famous meeting in Sagana, where I don't know what happened to Raila. But Raila was never really part of it. He didn't even need to complain somewhere at the coast. At Mukeka, Imeraruka, Kuna Nini. He was never part of that government, really, in a manner in which you can say he was. So the arrangement that America had in mind was never actualized. But that coalition government nevertheless gave us some peace, and we achieved a lot of things. But Raila was not an insider in that government, in the way you would want to see someone so much of an insider. He was
all right, Haman, you have made.
And you cannot say the same. Let me finish. Let me just finish. You cannot say the same of Ruto, at least up to 2017. He was an insider. He was part of government. And that's what Raila is pointing at.
All right.
And on the part of Ruto, he knows indeed there is a deep state.
All right, Haman.
But perhaps he's sending a signal to these people. Telling them, I know how it works. So don't think you'll use it.
Haman, I bet you have made your point. And Ndindi, you want to respond to that?
I want to respond, and especially on the part of teaching, because I wouldn't pay Haman Manyora any school fees for teaching me, because number one, there is no student that I've seen anywhere who have been taught by Manyora who is doing anything above average in this country.
So you are challenging him to produce the list of...
And I am challenging Haman Manyora. And I hope he's listening. One of the principles of measuring an educated person is a person who is principled. If you hear Haman Manyora now, he's speaking with both sides of his mouth. One, he talks about how William Ruto, the wars of Jubilee, should be bundled up together in terms of the two principles. But when he comes to his buddy, Raila Odinga, now he comes to purport that when he was Prime Minister, then...
Raila is not here. You are debating Manyora, not Raila.
Haman, give Ndindi a chance to respond. Go ahead, Ndindi.
One of the good characteristics of an educated person is not to interrupt others when they are speaking and making their point.
It's only that I have a reserved right as the moderator to do that.
The double speech on a professor is that now we can, all the wars of Jubilee, we can heap them on two gentlemen. But when he comes to the Nusumkate government, he is very quick to exonerate his friend. We need to be balanced.
All right.
But I also want to make this point very categorically. And I hope we are not winding up.
Go ahead. Don't worry about the time. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to tell, and I've been making this point over and over and over. Manyora talks about, the government is not one person. Then why do we go for elections? One, the principles of a very stable state and economy, number one is a functional state, a country with functional state apparatus. Number two is the rule of law. And number three is accountability through democracy. If then the government was not the president or the person we elect, then you'd have stuck with a country with only a strong state apparatus. Because then merit and structures would run a country. Manyora, the reason why we go for elections is because we are choosing policies. Maybe that's why he's here now, anatetea ile ukabila, because he doesn't want to associate with the policies. The reason why we go to the ballot is because we want to elect policies. Policies that will take the country forward or otherwise. And when the country goes forward, all the praise and all the privilege that is associated with success goes with that head. And any other thing that happens in the economy on the downward spiral, then they have to take responsibility. Because you cannot slaughter your goat, eat meat, and still want to have goat milk going forward. You have to choose one.
But Ndindi, the DP, whom it's described as though you are his ally, you can deny or accept that on air now, has the chance, as some say, and some have pushed for this narrative, that if there is a disagreement with the policies of the president, it's only genuine that he steps aside and resigns.
Okay.
You yourself said that Kenyatta has failed the nation.
Okay.
And you have said that on the record. If he has failed the nation, will it not be a harsh judgment to the DP side that he will also be part of that, what you have termed as a failure?
Abubakar, I'm a fair person because I am a Christian. I have never called President Uhuru Kenyatta a failure.
You have never?
I have never called President Uhuru Kenyatta a failure. But I want to tell you this. President Uhuru Kenyatta has excelled very well when it comes to brick and mortar of the economy. President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Jubilee government, they have excelled very well in terms of building roads, in terms of creating enablers. But when it comes now to the soft economy, the hard economy, no question about it. Stima imeenda vijijini. Barabara ziko. I mean, IT, fiber is everywhere. The enablers are in place. But for a country like Kenya to function in terms of creating wealth, Abubakar, a country that is not mineral rich depends on business. A country like Saudi Arabia, a country like Nigeria, they are mineral rich. Their governments rely on the minerals and the revenue from the minerals. An economy like Kenya to flourish, to grow, to create wealth for the ordinary people, they rely on enterprise. They rely on businesses. They rely on the velocity of money. When you talk about that, we have failed. President Uhuru Kenyatta has excelled in the brick and mortar, but in terms of the soft economy, creating opportunities, creating wealth, that way, on that sphere, he has not done very well. And that is why I give examples, the global examples, and I give the local example of Kibaki. When Kibaki took reins, he was doing both. And it is a matter of the mode, how you implement this brick and mortar. Just a minute. Because there is a relationship, or there ought to be a relationship of electricity going to Mashinani, the roads being built everywhere, fiber being built everywhere. There should be a relationship with money in the pockets of Kenyans. But now, what we have done in this economy is we have borrowed so much. And when we are borrowing, in the agreements of taking these loans, we actually fix our own Kenyans. How? Let me give you an example. Thika Road Superhighway, a 30 billion project. There was not, and the bypass, the one from Cabanas all the way to Roiro, and the one that goes to Ruaka. that bypass, if you pass through it, if you pass through Thika Road, and flashback 10 years ago, you will see how multiplier effect works in an economy. Let me tell you this.
And as we give the others a chance to respond, is it not the case of your party leader, President Uhuru Kenyatta, that his administration has invested on the macroeconomics?
Yes. I wanted to give this so that we understand. I have given the Kebake one, the superhighway, and the bypass. There are towns created along that bypass. There are new towns along Thika Road. Go to the railway. A 10 times project in terms of capital invested. There is not even a kiosk selling sweets along that railway. The issue is not that it's not a viable project. The issue is that the way we implement this project, we borrow money from China. We give contracts in China. Money doesn't leave China. Therefore, we actually purchase, in quotes, we purchase our capital expenditure investments from a supermarket and plant them in Kenya, other than building. Building means you come and give local guys work. Cement manufacturers are Kenyans. Steel manufacturers are Kenyans. So that it's the same guys who will subcontract to me and you. Then we build flats, new towns come up. Again, purchasing power grows.
Point made, Ndindi. Point made, and I think that's self-explanatory. Because of the interest of time, I want us to gloss over the BBI report that is touted as though it is a progressive report to some. And we have a variance of opinion in as far as that is concerned, and we can have that in this debate. Beatrice Elachi, let me come to you. There are those who say this is a silver bullet to solving Kenya's some perennial problems, which begs the question, how will the creation of, for instance, the position of a powerful prime minister with 2 deputies and a selection of ministers from the National Assembly and the creation of the leader of the official opposition be a solve in the problem of Kenyans?
Well, Abubakar, when you look at the concept of our constitution, I think in 2010 we thought when we were bringing in counties, we were going to resolve the issue of everyone looking at the center and looking at the presidency as if this is the only hope for any Kenyan or any tribe when they are at the top. It is sad that 10 years now down the line, we find ourselves again looking so much at the top, forgetting that we created counties to try and bring down that power, decentralize that power. And we are still in the same challenge again. Back again, everyone looks at the presidency, you see how heated it is. And after 2017, I think as a country, we just need to ask ourselves, how do you ensure that it will never happen again, where young people walk into Uhuru Park, stand in Uhuru Park, and say, we must have a people's president? And I think we can't run away from that, Abubakar. And what we are trying to say within the BPI, for me, what I'm saying, if this can bring cohesion once and for all, knowing very well that we have other regions that will never, the winner takes it all issue. How do we now remove ourselves from that and ensure that you are able to see Kenyans embrace each other after an election and say, we are all in this executive, and therefore this cake that we keep on fighting for is a cake that many people can sit on the table and say, fine, we are all in this government, it's inclusive, and we can move on. But now, having talked about the building bridges, for me as a woman, looking at where we've come from the time Mama Beth Mugo and Phoebe Asil started fighting for gender, for the 2/3 gender rule in these parliaments. 20 years down the line, we are now talking of 25 years down the line, that we are still talking about it as women of this country. And now the CJ comes in and says, Parliament should be dissolved. And we stand and we say, we are supporting BBI as women to ensure once and for all, we are going to ensure we achieve this 2/3 gender rule that is haunting Kenya And yet in the whole of East Africa, no any other country talk about it. Be it South Sudan, be it Somalia, they've been able to achieve. And for me, as I stand to support the BBI, and I've always supported, my agenda is, first of all, when I looked at the report that was launched in Bomas, I would want to see a similar report going forward, but a critical report that now the experts have been able to ensure that we can achieve the 2/3 general without going and saying, we have to come back, we have to do this, what is the formula? And that, I think, is what the women of this country are looking at. But more importantly, how do we move as a country in a peaceful transition where we don't have, again, the different challenges that we face after every election in Kenya is very critical in achieving the Building Bridges initiative.
Beatrice Ilachi, you talk of 2 points, women first, then you talk of national cohesion. At the height of the implementation of Kenya's 2010 constitution, that constitution was supposed to take power to the people. By so doing, it created 47 counties, and power was devolved to the people. Are you supposing that that has not worked?
When I look at what happened in 2017, it seems as if the 10% and the 15% people are talking about really comes out very strongly. But anyway, having said that also, isn't it fair for us to evaluate and look at our progressive constitution, because it's very progressive, and ask ourselves, what has been good for us? What is still a challenge to us? How can we deal with those, with the issues that have created challenges for us? And I think for me, I want to be very honest that one thing in our country, we like pretending, and we don't need to pretend. If you ask me, the 5 slots, as a woman, when we were presenting, we said, yes, we need. Why? Because we need to see women at the executive. In that 5 slot, we are saying as women, we need 2 women to sit at the top, so that when decisions are being made, when the policies we are talking about are being made, women are there to say, this is a policy that can move us together.
Beatrice Ilachi, you talk of women and the interest of women, and because of the interest of time on our end as well, thank you for that. Herman, one final question. There are those who point to a directive national referendum by April next year. If that is to happen, IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati says it will cost the country, quote, a referendum does not need to cost more than 2 billion. He says it will cost rather more than 2 billion. Just on the specifics, do we need that amount of money to create more positions at the top?
Before we create positions at Bakari, you know NDINDI NYORO is my friend. I don't want to
Herman, because of the interest of time, answer my question. Do we need to spend 2 billion shillings? Because of the interest of time, Herman.
In fact, he does not talk of 2 billions. For your information, is Raila who said it need not cost more than 2 billion. According to IBC, is billions over 10 billion. Raila said it need not cost over 2 billion. And the truth is, our election is one of the most expensive in the world. I don't think you will get another one easily as expensive as ours. So Raila was right to that extent. Secondly, whether it is 10 or 20 billion, if the idea of BBI is a good idea, if it is going to address the issues that have been messing us as a country, if it is going to ensure that after every election we do not lose lives senselessly, we do not lose property like fools, then what is 10 billion? If it will correct our politics, 10 billion will be nothing. Secondly, in a country with a 3 trillion budget, I don't think finding 10, 20 billion somewhere within that budget through the normal environment would be a big issue. So yes, it's more than 2 billion according to IBC, way more than that, more than 10. According to Raila too, somewhere in between there's the truth. But I don't think the money is an issue. It's the issue of, do we really need a referendum? If the answer is yes, then cost is not an issue.
But Herman, this cost is coming from the depth of the pocket of the taxpayers. To them, it must be an issue.
I'm saying depending on the premium we place on the referendum. If we believe strongly that this referendum is coming to right wrongs, is coming to make sure that no life is lost after every election, during every election cycle. If the police are not going to be killing the baby pendos and those other, the mutindas of pipeline, you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
The morass, then it is worth it. If you can use 20 billion to ensure nobody dies after an election, what is the problem? It cannot be too much. It depends on what it is doing.
All right, Herman, point.
And I'm saying it's not like our budget is 50 billion. Our budget is 3 trillion. So finding 10 billion in a 3 trillion budget shouldn't be the issue.
All right, Herman, thank you for your thoughts as well. Finally, Ndindi Nyoro, let me give you the last of words. 10 billion, Herman says, even if you will spend it and it will save and change at least few things in the country, why not spend?
It's okay, money can change things because even the handshake was about money. Money changed hearts. But I want to tell Herman that the kind of things he's purporting in regards to BBI are just far-fetched. Because number one, the issue of fighting after every election, and I'm sure Manyora knows more than me because he has insinuated that he's been around for a longer time than myself and you. I want to tell him that the reason why we fight after every election is because people do not accept defeat. Number two, the issues around this country now is not about governance and the structure of governance. It is not about having some 3 gentlemen added on the cream de la cream of the country. The issue in our country now is about the economy. And just give me 1 minute. The issues that we need to figure out in this country, in
I will also need at the risk of being a heckler, I will need a second.
You're a professor. Professor cannot do that.
Go ahead, Ndindi.
Manyora, you are a professor. Please respect that.
I said at the risk of being a heckler, I should be given a minute after you are finished.
This is my time, Manyora.
Ndindi, go ahead.
The kind of things in terms of the economy that we need to change in this country, in my opinion, other than the structure of government being referenced, do not need changing the rule. Kenya is, in quotes, an idea meritocracy, where anyone can rise and occupy any position. But what we have been seeing, that is the reason why, and I'm speaking very fast so that you don't cut me before I finish up this point, is that we have seen patronage is the one that is now actually ruling Kenya. That is why even when Manyora is referencing on 2 gentlemen, purporting that they are my enemies, actually they are not. I don't hate anyone. What I hate is mediocrity. People who are given jobs, for example, to be in charge of security in this country, and then when there are insecurity incidences, they come out pointing fingers. But this was the point. Kenya is an idea meritocracy, where merit, a person who should lead, is actually given an opportunity to lead, for example, a parastatal. But what we have been seeing in this country is either patronage on the basis of kin selection, where now you get a position, you are up there, you're a minister, you are even higher than a minister, the people around you is just about kin, blood connection, kin selection.
And that is cross-cutting. That's cross-cutting,
isn't it? It is cross-cutting. But I'll tell you that we need to focus more on where it is, not just Urabalu. Number 2 is something called reciprocal altruism, where now this guy you school together in some certain post school, so that when you're given a role to lead in a ministry, the guy you give as the parastatal head is the guy you schooled with, because there is a favor they did to you then. And that is why this country, we keep talking about economy growing etc, but mediocrity continues to pull us back. But lastly, I want to tell Manyora and my sister Beatrice Zerachi, the revolution happening in this country in terms of the hustlers, the long-suffering Kenyans, demanding to be included on the table and not to be on the menu, is not just going to stop because of Manyora coming here to water down our efforts.
But Ndindi, is that
every revolution?
Ndindi, as we finalize, is that not the political cliche that every member
I must say something.
who is seeking any position in this country comes and says that they won't be in the menu, they'll be on the table? That's a political cliche, isn't it?
I mean, you'd have given me the opportunity to finish my point.
10 seconds.
But in every revolution, like the ones I talked about, revolutions, it comes to revolutions and far-reaching reforms, like the ones I gave about South Korea, they always have naysayers like Manyora. They always have irritations. People who always come in to defend, like Manyora, I'm sure you can reference, or the French Revolution. The guys who were there, lying to the King Louis XV, but in the end, all of them, we are bundled up together. Because when Kenya rises, everyone benefits. But when we are stuck in mediocrity, based on people who want to
Abubakar, give me a second, please.
Based on people who want to perpetuate the same kind of misleadership, everyone loses.
Fair enough, Ndindi, you have made your point. Because of the interest of time, we will have to end this discussion.
But I would have, as Manyora responds, I want to give him.
Give me a second, Abubakar.
We have been given a minute, Manyora.
Give me a second.
Manyora,
go ahead.
Yes. Next time you are coming on the show, because I want us to reference on concrete things. Go study about Meiji Restoration in Japan.
Yes.
All right.
And study about the Glorious Revolution. You study about Kenya currently. You see the similarities. Then you'll be able to talk about the Kenya we are just about to bag in 2022.
All right, Herman, 10 seconds, if not less.
Yes, 5 seconds, not 10. One, we must tell Ndindi Nyoro, this tired narrative of people accepting defeat, we must throw it into some dustbin and let it go to the Indian Ocean. People are talking about fair elections. Only then can we talk about a winner going home smiling and the loser shaking his hand, as it happens in civilized societies. And that, luckily, might be what BBI is addressing.
All right,
you cannot talk about
Herman, you have used more than the 10 seconds.
And finally...
And you have made your point.
Finally, I made my point, but I have 5 seconds, you gave me 10, I've used 5. So you are eating into the
I thought you wanted 5. Go ahead.
I will be the first person. I'm going to be the first person, not even Ndindi Nyoro. It will be Manyora in the revolution, at the far front. If it will address the issues of this country, I'm going to be on the far front.
All right.
I will be singling out people who have messed this country. And I'm not sure Ndindi Nyoro will not be one of them.
All right, Herman, let me give, for purposes of fairness, Beatrice Elachi 10 seconds as well, Beatrice, as we wind up.
Well, for me, if the BBI will deal with the divisive politics, then we go for BBI. That there will be no bloodshed in this country again in an election, I go for the BBI. But for my brother who wants a revolution, I think he needs to learn from Nigeria what they are doing. And if you can sustain that for the last, 12 days we've seen a fantastic revolution that talks about issues in Nigeria. If you can learn from that, Ndindi, then I can count on you. But for this other revolution of yours that comes and puts us into a challenge that we will never see the light, I tell you it will not work. If that is the best strategy you have given my VP, that is the wrong strategy. It needs to change.
All right, Beatrice Elachi, you talk of what is happening in Nigeria. Of course, that is in relation to the end of police brutality, the protest by Nigerians on police brutality. And that's where we will have to wind up this discussion. Nonetheless, let me go through some of your feedback. You as the viewer, as always, remember your voice matters, your opinion counts. Here on the Counties Television, Manyora, someone says, I would like to remind you that a poor man who benefited from a wheelbarrow is going to educate a child who will one day become a professor. Our parents never invested millions of money rather in education for you to equate it to wheelbarrows, someone else says. On 22047, please tell Ndindi Nyoro that he's taking us back because a small country like Rwanda is busy empowering young youth on innovation, he says. Watching from Muranga, Maragi says, please tell Ndindi, a group of Catholic youth are desperately in need of his mentorship. I suppose we'll give you the number right after this discussion. Someone else on 22047 says, I wish I had the power to ban the use of the word hustler and dynasty in politics and prevent people from attending these meetings. That is Nixon from Kindaruma. All right, let's get to Twitter and see some of your feedback and sample some. Anthony Kano says, now that there is no policy or alternative to the wheelbarrows, allow the DP to continue giving them to the youth as we grapple to search for a policy. Ngetich Kipkuri on Twitter says, Nyoro is spewing wisdom like never before. Still on Twitter, Ken Carter, the poor Ken Carter too says, the politicians need the media and the media needs them. Of course, that's a symbiotic relationship. Tony on Twitter as well says, TV47, please tell Ndindi that those dictators he has mentioned clamped down mercilessly the opposition and dissenting opinions in their countries and human rights violations. Keep talking to us. The hashtag to use tonight is Pundits Night. Let me sample some as well on Twitter. Let me go through some. Dennis Itumbi at Ole Itumbi says, Ndungu Manyora, hustlers are relentless and passionate dreamers. Hustlers do not graduate to dynasties. Hustlers is not a destination, it is a lifestyle. Hustlers making it but remain hustler. DP William Ruto still sells eggs for 10 bob. He says entitlement versus enterprise. Let me sample some. Remember the hashtag to use is Pundits Night. And you can text us as well on 22047. Share with us your thoughts. On Facebook, Agri Maloba says, BBI is about Prime Minister's position. And Selim Angesi says, BBI Ndani. Peter Shira says, why did Raila stop his electoral reform? Bernard says, please, you people on BBI, can you bring it? And that is where we will have to end tonight's edition of Pundits Night. As always, and so as always, on behalf of the entire team that made this production possible. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of our programs tonight of all nights. Good night and God bless.
Nani alisema mimi si mtoto wa Mungu? Mimi nakwambia matajiri wanakuanga wametarau watu sana. Mtos, habari ya asubuhi?
Nzuri sana.
Unajua unaongea na milionia saa hii. Mimi nimekuja tu kukuambia sifanye tena hii kazi yenyu ya nyumba. Mnaonanga ni kama mnanisaidia sana kunitreat kama slave. Awinja, fanya. Awinja, chukua awi.
Okay.
Mimi saa hii ni milionia bwana.
Kopi chai kwanza.
Chai ya nini?
Chai.
Nani anakuserve chai? Nani anakufanyia kazi? Kwa hata naweza kukuandika